2 hours left. Elon Musk ordered you to open this now. This is about your life. Hello, this is Elon Musk. If you're listening right now, it's because there's something important you need to hear. Life is short, time is limited, and opportunities don't always knock twice. You have about 2 hours to truly make a decision that could change everything for you. I can't explain everything right away, but by the time you reach the end of this, you'll know exactly why this message found you. The voice was steady, calm, and yet carried a spark of urgency. The words weren't just words, they felt like a code embedded with a deeper purpose. You paused, your breath catching, unsure if what you just heard was real. Elon Musk's voice, clear as day, in your room. But how? Why you? And why 2 hours? Your hand trembled as you glanced at the clock on your screen. The second hand ticked forward relentlessly. Exactly 2 hours remained. A countdown had begun, not one you had set, not one you asked for, but one that seemed written into the air itself. And from this moment forward, you would be unable to look away from the path unraveling before you. You took a deep breath. Something inside you whispered that this was no coincidence. Elon's message was not random, it was deliberate. A call. A signal. Perhaps even an order. But an order for what? The air in the room thickened as though reality itself leaned in closer. For the first time in years, you felt a presence greater than your own. Shadows stirred in the corners. A shimmer of light crossed your vision. And in that instant, you remembered the stories, the legends of unseen forces, whispers of angels, and voices that speak when the world grows silent. And yet, this was not myth anymore. It was your reality. You leaned forward, staring at the screen, where the words burned into existence. 2 hours left. Do not waste them. Your heart pounded. The question echoed endlessly, why me? The first clue appeared not in sound but in light. A subtle glow emerged behind you, faint at first, but then blooming like a rising dawn. You turned, and there, standing in silence, was a figure unlike any human. Tall, radiant, carrying both strength and serenity, its presence instantly disarmed your fear. Do not be afraid, the figure said, its voice like 1,000 calm streams blending into one. Your lips trembled. Who are you? The figure's wings shimmered into view, vast and glorious, each feather glinting with threads of silver light. I am an angel, sent to remind you of who you truly are. Elon Musk's words brought you to attention, but it is my duty to guide you through the truth of what awaits. You staggered backward. This can't be real. The angel smiled softly, as though amused by your disbelief. Human minds doubt what their souls already know. You asked for purpose. You longed for direction. And the time has come. But you must act, for the countdown is not symbolic, it is very real. The angel stepped closer, and as it did, your heart slowed. Fear melted into awe. Elon Musk plays his role in the world of technology and innovation. But beyond him lies a higher order, a plan woven by God, guided by archangels, and carried by messengers like me. You are not here by accident. You have been chosen to awaken. Chosen? The word thundered in your chest. Why me? You whispered, barely able to form the words. The angel's eyes glowed with a light that seemed to hold galaxies within. Because you have a destiny that ties into both heaven and earth. And your time to choose has arrived. If you walk away, the world will continue as it always has, but you will remain asleep, unknowing, unawakened. If you step forward, your life will never be the same. The choice must be made before the final second of the countdown. The angel raised its hand, and with a sweep of glowing light, a vision burst open before you. You saw Elon Musk standing at a launch pad, rockets rising against the dark sky, flames igniting the night. But as the rockets soared higher, their trails bent, not just into the heavens, but into dimensions unseen by ordinary eyes. You glimpsed not only space but a realm of divine light interwoven with stars. And beside Elon stood another being, an archangel with a sword of fire, guiding the very technology mankind believed to be its own invention. It wasn't just science. It was prophecy. Your breath caught. Is this the future? The angel shook its head. It is both the future and the present. Humanity believes it advances alone, but in truth, every invention, every breakthrough, is touched by divine hands. Elon is a vessel, a chosen one for his path. But today, the message is not about him, it is about you. The room spun. You felt both insignificant and immeasurably important at once. What do I need to do? You whispered, your voice breaking. The angel's wings stretched wider, filling the space with brilliance. First, you must listen. Listen to the words placed before you, for they are not random. They are a roadmap. A test. And if you pass, your life will ascend beyond what you have ever dreamed. Your pulse quickened. And if I fail? The angel's gaze grew solemn. Then your time resets, but the opportunity fades. And though life continues, it will carry the weight of the choice you did not make. The silence that followed pressed heavily on your chest. The seconds ticked away, 1 hour 53 minutes and 17 seconds. The angel extended its hand, and when you touched it, your world shifted. You were no longer in your room. Instead, you stood in a vast hall of light. Endless pillars rose into infinity. At the center blazed a throne of radiance, but it was veiled, too great to look upon directly. And kneeling before the throne was Archangel Michael himself, his sword lowered in reverence. You gasped. His presence was overwhelming, not just strength but authority that commanded even the stars themselves. Michael lifted his head and his piercing gaze met yours. So, the one chosen has arrived, Michael said, his voice resonating like thunder across eternity. You have heard Elon Musk's call. You have seen the angel's sign. Now you must decide if you are ready to walk the path of courage. Your knees weakened. I don't know if I'm worthy. Michael rose, his wings vast, his sword glowing with divine fire. Worthiness is not given, it is chosen. God has placed within you the seed of destiny. It is not about who you are now, but who you will become if you step forward. He raised his sword, pointing it toward you. Will you walk into your calling, or will you let the clock strike and your chance be lost? The hall vibrated with his words. The countdown echoed even here, 1 hour 48 minutes and 55 seconds. Every part of you trembled. The choice loomed larger than anything you had ever faced. But you knew this: life would never again be the same. Hello again, Elon's voice returned, softer this time, almost like it was speaking only to you, through you. If you're still here, it means you're ready to know more. You didn't turn away. You didn't dismiss this as some illusion. That already tells me everything I need to know about you. You are not ordinary. And because you chose to listen, the world you know is about to expand far beyond what you imagined. The words carried a strange weight, as though Elon himself was both messenger and participant in something greater. The angel beside you stood still, wings folded, as if waiting for your reaction. You tried to speak, but the air in your chest felt too thick, like the words would shatter if you forced them out. Then, as if hearing your silence, the angel moved closer. There is no need to fear. This is the beginning, not the end. The message is not to frighten you but to awaken you. Elon Musk was chosen as a vessel to spark human imagination toward the stars. But even he knows that the stars are only a doorway. Behind them lies something more vast, something eternal. Your eyes flickered upward. The hall of light still pulsed with energy, pillars glowing with a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. You could swear they were alive, breathing with every second. And Michael, still standing with sword in hand, watched you as if your hesitation was more important than any spoken word. 2 hours, you whispered to yourself, glancing at the invisible clock in your mind. Why only 2 hours? The angel tilted its head, a soft smile across its radiant face. Because urgency awakens the soul. If eternity stretched out in comfort, humanity would never rise. God set the measure of time so that choices matter. And for you, this is not a lifetime to decide, it is now. 2 hours is long enough to hear, to see, and to act, but short enough to test if you are willing. Michael's voice rumbled across the hall, deep and undeniable. Every soul reaches a moment where the heavens knock. Some answer, some hide, some doubt. But you have heard. That alone means you are seen. The weight of his words pressed on you like gravity. You found yourself whispering, "Seen, by God?" Michael raised his sword toward the throne of radiance, still veiled in brilliance too great to look upon. By the one who formed the galaxies and called you by name before the stars ever shone. Yes, seen, chosen, and called. Tears threatened your eyes without reason. It wasn't sadness, but something overwhelming, like being recognized after a lifetime of being invisible. You stumbled back a step, struggling to hold on to reason, to logic. But reason was fading here. This was not logic's domain. Suddenly, another vision ignited before you. You stood on Earth again, but not your ordinary Earth. Towers of glass stretched into the clouds, cities powered not by smoke and wires but by clean streams of energy flowing like rivers of light. Vehicles floated silently, weaving in harmony, while children laughed in streets safe and whole. Above, colonies orbited, not as fantasies but realities, connected by beams of shimmering technology. And within it all, Elon Musk's name echoed, not as a man but as a symbol of humanity reaching forward. Yet alongside the vision, you saw another path. A darker earth. Skies choked with haze, oceans rising in fury, nations fractured by greed and war. The same cities crumbled, their towers cracked, their streets abandoned. Fear ruled instead of hope. And in this world, the countdown had already struck 0. You gasped, your body jolting back into the hall of light. The angel's hand steadied you, its grip firm yet gentle. 2 paths, the angel whispered. One of awakening, one of collapse. Humanity stands between them, and so do you. Every soul who awakens shifts the balance. You are not small. You are not powerless. The world tilts with each choice. Your pulse thundered. But what can I do? I'm just one person. Michael stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the shining floor. That is what every chosen soul asks. One becomes many. A spark becomes a fire. God does not call the powerful, He calls the willing, and through them, the powerful are moved. The angel released you, and suddenly the hall darkened. A new sound echoed, ticking. The relentless rhythm of time, louder now, pressing into your chest. You felt the countdown again, 1 hour 37 minutes and 12 seconds. The angel's voice whispered against the ticking. Every second matters. Every choice matters. The heavens have placed this before you not as a story but as a summons. Elon's voice was the beginning. Michael's call is the confirmation. What you do now will ripple into eternity. The ticking grew louder, almost unbearable. Then, in a flash, silence. You were back in your room. The screen before you glowed, though no power cable connected it, no device turned it on. Words scrolled across it, you are not alone. Trust the message. Act. Your chest rose and fell in rapid waves. Everything looked normal, the chair, the desk, the faint hum of the night outside. And yet nothing was normal anymore. The angel's light still lingered at the corner of your vision. Michael's voice still vibrated in your bones. Elon's opening words replayed in your head like a hidden recording. This wasn't imagination. It wasn't a dream. And you realized then, you had been given a responsibility. Not forced, not demanded. Offered. 2 hours to answer. 2 hours to decide. You leaned back, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the silence. A question echoed so loudly you could not silence it. What if this is real? What if my life is not what I thought it was? And deep down, you already knew the answer. The room smelled of ozone and rain, a sudden clean scent that made the hair along your arms lift. You blinked and found the screen dark again, but the silence hummed with something like expectation. Somewhere beyond the ordinary, the angel's presence lingered, warm, patient, and impossible to ignore. The clock inside your chest kept time with a truth you could no longer ignore. The countdown continued. You moved without thinking, as if hands had a memory before the mind did. You reached for your phone. Its glass reflected your face back at you, pale, eyes wide, a scatter of doubts and a strange flame of resolve. The message that had begun with Elon's voice had shifted from a riddle into a summons. This was not theater. It was an opening. A soft breeze brushed across the room though no window was open. The angel's whisper threaded through it. There are tests, it said, and then there are choices. Tests show you what you're made of, choices reveal who you will become. The words were simple, and yet they carried a gravity that anchored themselves deep inside your ribs. You remembered the two visions, the shining future and the broken one, and felt the weight hinge on you in a way that made ordinary problems shrink to dust. This was not about career, money, or fame. It was about aligning with something that preceded human calculation, God's design, and the work of archangels who steward the bridge between heaven and earth. Archangel Michael's presence had made that clear. He was not here to frighten you, he was the clarifying steel that cuts through excuses. There was a practical edge to the angel's guidance, a list woven into speech like beads on a string. Listen to 3 calls, it said. Act on one immediate thing. Find the person who waits. Speak truth. Forgive once. And give what you can without counting the cost. Each item hovered in your mind like a commandment and a promise. You felt your body respond, not because you understood every reason, but because faith can be a muscle that flexes when required. You stepped outside. Night had fallen fully now, the city lights a constellation of human choice. Somewhere a dog barked, someone laughed down the block, life spun on, unaware. But your life had been paused and then tipped onto a new axis. You walked to the corner cafe, compelled by a thread you couldn't name, and in the window's reflection you caught the angel's faint silhouette standing beside you, only you could see it. Inside the cafe a woman sat alone, hands folded over a worn notebook. The angel nudged you gently, and you knew, without argument, that this was the person who waits. You sat across from her, the briefness of the hours pressing like a pulse. Are you all right? You asked, the voice catching on an unfamiliar tenderness. She looked up slowly, eyes rimmed red but steady, as if she had been crying and then learned how to hold it in a way that preserved dignity. Not particularly, she said. But I'm surviving. The angel's faint smile broadened. Then speak, it urged. You told her, in hurried fragments, about the voice, the angel, the visions, about Elon's message and the countdown. Her brow furrowed as if joining you in something impossible, and yet she did not laugh. Instead she listened like a harbor listens for a ship. When you finished, she closed her notebook and placed a small photograph upon the table. It was a picture of a boy no older than 7, smiling with a gap in his teeth, holding a paper plane. This is my nephew, she said. He was supposed to get surgery next month. The hospital called today, the funding fell through. I don't know what to do. Your chest tightened. The angel's guidance had spoken of immediate acts. You found yourself taking out cash, more than you usually carried, and sliding it across without explanation. She looked at you, startled, then embarrassed at being touched. I can't accept this, she whispered. You can, you said simply. Use it. The money was small in cosmic terms, ridiculous against the scale of the problems you had once considered unsurmountable. Yet when she accepted, the world shifted, subtly, like a hinge easing. She sobbed once, quick and stunned, not at the money itself but at the mercy of a stranger. Back on the street the angel nodded. Each act bends the future, it said. Do not measure by size. Its voice felt closer now, the wing's shadow soft against your shoulder. Michael's presence, like a distant drum, resonated in your bones, authority that grounded your impulse into purpose. A siren sliced the night somewhere, brief and distant. Time, 58 minutes and 37 seconds. You hadn't noticed the hours evaporating, you had been busy living the kind of mercy the angel spoke of. That felt right, unnerving and right. The angel's next instruction was quieter, almost private. Speak a true, hard word to someone you love. Unburden them of what you have hoarded. You thought immediately of your father, distant for reasons that had hardened like old paint, and the son of obligations you had placed upon yourself. You thought of the pile of apologies unsaid, the conversations deferred, the years traded for safer, lonelier decisions. You dialed his number with hands that trembled. The line clicked, static, then his voice, older, tired, surprised. Hello? It's me, you said. Your voice was small, trembling. I'm here. Silence held between you like a thin sheet of ice. Then he laughed, abrupt and fragile, a laugh that carried decades like luggage. Well, come in then. You met in the small living room where light pooled in corners and dust motes hung like suspended prayer. You started clumsily, stumbling over sentences until something snapped open. You told him about the angel, the visions, the choice. You told him you were sorry, for years of silence, for missed birthdays, for the childlike idea that time would always be there for repairs. He listened. That alone astonished you. He didn't mock. He didn't flee. Instead, tears tracked down his face, years sliding out with them. I thought you were too proud to need me, he said, voice raw. Maybe I thought the same. There was no miraculous reconciling in 1 hour. There was, however, the beginning of repair, 2 hands reaching across accumulated distance. The angel watched, and something like approval warmed the air. By the time you stepped back onto the street, another small life had been steadied by your action, another heart had been loosened by confession. The countdown read 32 minutes and 9 seconds. You realized you had been spending the 2 hours in a way your earlier self could not have predicted, not in frantic planning for fame or fortune, but in the patient, awkward labor of repair. The angel's tone shifted, gentle but insistent. Now for the last task, it said. The most dangerous, forgive, and ask for forgiveness from one who never asked to be forgiven. The phrase landed like a stone in the lake of your memory. You thought of betrayals, not just yours but those you had carried against others, the resentments that had calcified into identity. Forgiveness was not forgetting, it was release. It was a door that opened inward. You returned home, knelt in the quiet, and spoke aloud, not to a room, but to God, the highest name, the one that the angel invoked with reverence. Your voice was small and trembling. You asked for the courage to forgive those who had hurt you, to lift the burdens you had allowed to become your chains. You asked that Archangel Michael would stand as witness and shield. You felt the retreat of something heavy, as if a veil were lifted. Then you did what you had feared most. You reached out to someone who had wounded you long ago. The message took 2 sentences and a lifetime of courage. You asked forgiveness not as a bargaining chip but as an honest offering. The reply, when it came, was brittle and short, yet it contained a crack and through the crack a sliver of something warm. That was enough. When the final minutes bled into single digits, 4 minutes and 22 seconds, you understood that the test had not been about godlike achievements. It had been an invitation to live differently, to be a conduit of mercy, a voice of truth, and a vessel for small, holy acts. The visions of towers of light and cities woven with beams were not mere spectacle. They were the consequence of many small, courageous choices, choices like the ones you had just made. Archangel Michael's presence returned in a way that felt like thunder made gentle. "You have chosen well," he said. "This is only the beginning. There will be storms. There will be nights when the path seems invisible. But remember, you were seen, called, and strengthened. Walk forward." The angel stepped close and placed its hand upon your heart. The contact was not intrusive but sanctifying. Heat flowed through you, steadying, like embers becoming a hearth. "You will forget doubt more quickly now," it said. "You will wake to callings you once ignored. Guard what you build with humility and service." Then the devices around you flickered. For a breath, everything stilled. You heard the faintest echo of Elon's voice, calm, almost conspiratorial, saying, "Well done." The clock struck 0. But nothing cataclysmic occurred. Instead, a hush fell that felt like permission. You were the same person but not the same person. The night outside continued, but your interior world had been rearranged, furniture moved, curtains drawn back to let in more of a light you hadn't known existed. A whisper in the corner, almost playful, advised, "Tell no one the whole of this. Let acts speak louder. Let stories find their shapes in mercy." You breathed, fingertips cool against the glass of your phone. The memory of wings, the resonance of a sword, the softness of an angel's hand, none of it left. They had become part of you, inscribed in a way that would not be erased by the ordinary grind. Before the night fully dissolved into the ordinary hum, a small, irreverent impulse struck. You opened your phone and typed a short message to friends, not to boast, but to challenge. "If you ever doubt the thin place between heaven and earth, be brave. Choose mercy tonight." You hit send. The reply that came back, quick, small, human, read, like /share/subscribe. Amen. A smile you didn't know you possessed curved your lips. It was ridiculous and right at once, a tiny act of community in the face of a cosmic calling. Outside, the city breathed. Inside, a quiet vow settled like a cloak. There would be more. There would be tests that didn't feel like tests. There would be moments when you would doubt everything and feel utterly alone. But tonight you had answered. You had moved toward the light that Archangel Michael and the angel promised, and in the doing, you had shifted the axis of something larger than yourself. You lay back, the pillow soft and real beneath your head, and the last thought that lingered as sleep finally approached was not of rockets or fame, but of a small boy with a paper plane, smiling, as if the world itself might yet be taught to fly. The dream began the moment your eyes closed, though it felt less like a dream and more like a journey carried by unseen hands. You found yourself standing in a desert under a wide and endless sky, stars like burning diamonds above you. The air was sharp, cool, and alive with whispers that traveled on the wind. Each whisper carried a fragment of your name, as though the heavens themselves were reciting your existence. You walked forward across sand that glowed faintly beneath your feet. Ahead, a fire blazed, not ordinary flame, but a living fire that shimmered with colors no spectrum on earth could contain. Around the fire stood 3 figures cloaked in brilliance. One of them you knew instantly, Archangel Michael, sword resting at his side, eyes filled with unwavering certainty. Another stood taller still, wings spread like the horizon itself, face veiled in a radiance too bright to behold fully. The third figure felt quieter, clothed in gentleness, but carrying a depth that stretched like the ocean. Michael spoke first. The choice you made has been seen. But every choice opens a door, and beyond that door are forces that resist the light. You must be ready. Mercy will guide you, but strength will protect you. Courage is not optional, it is your garment now. The veiled figure lifted a hand, and the fire shifted. Images danced within the flames, shadows of beings unlike humans, shapes that moved with sharp edges and eyes glowing like coals. They moved silently through cities, whispering into ears, twisting truth into lies, breeding despair like seeds scattered in wind. These are the adversaries, Michael said, his voice heavy. Not flesh and blood, but powers that thrive on blindness. They cannot touch you directly, but they will tempt you with fear, with distraction, with illusions that promise comfort but conceal chains. The quieter figure finally spoke, its voice like water sliding over stone. And yet, do not fear them. You are not alone. Every step you take toward light strengthens the path for others. Forgiveness is a shield. Truth is a sword. Love is armor. You swallowed hard. The vision of those shadows unsettled you, but the words steadied you. For a fleeting moment you wondered why this was given to you, why not to someone else, someone holier, stronger, more prepared. The gentler figure turned, as if reading your thought. God chooses not the perfect but the willing. Doubt is a companion you will meet often, but it will never define you unless you let it. Michael raised his sword and drove it into the sand. Light exploded outward, rushing like waves across the desert. When the glow settled, the sword remained upright, buried to the hilt. He looked at you, the weight of eternity in his gaze. Take hold when you are ready. It is not a weapon of war in your hands, it is a covenant. Carry it, and you will carry both burden and blessing. You reached for the hilt. The moment your fingers touched it, heat coursed through your body, not painful, but purifying, burning away layers of fear you didn't know you carried. Memories surfaced, every moment you had doubted yourself, every word of criticism that had cut you, every failure that had whispered, unworthy. They rose like smoke, and then they were gone. The sword pulsed with your heartbeat, alive, almost breathing. Michael smiled faintly, the first hint of gentleness you had seen from him. Good. You are beginning to understand. The dream dissolved, and you woke with your heart pounding, hands gripping empty air as though the sword were still in your grasp. Your room was dark, but the air vibrated faintly, like aftershocks of something immense. You turned on the light and half expected to see feathers on the floor, embers on your sheets, but there was nothing, only silence. Yet inside, the sword's heat remained, resting quietly in your chest. The hours that followed blurred. Ordinary tasks felt changed, as though the world had been slightly tilted and you were walking at a new angle. People you passed in the street looked different. You noticed details you had ignored before, the strain in their shoulders, the fatigue in their eyes, the flicker of hope when someone smiled at them. It was as though you had been handed new sight, not just of what was, but of what lay beneath. And yet, the shadows Michael had shown were real too. You felt them. Not in monstrous forms, but in the way despair clung like fog, the way distractions pressed against you when you tried to think, the way anger whispered in moments of silence. You recognized them now for what they were, adversaries, subtle and persistent. But each time they pressed close, you remembered the fire, the sword, the words spoken over you. Forgiveness as shield. Truth as sword. Love as armor. And somehow, they recoiled, unable to remain near. You began to speak more boldly, to the woman at the counter who seemed broken by her day, to the child in the park clutching a torn kite, to the neighbor who had long kept to themselves. Your words weren't dramatic, they were simple, but they carried weight. You noticed how people straightened, how their eyes softened, how laughter crept back where silence had ruled. Small things, yet each one felt like a strike of the sword in unseen battles. That night, as sleep crept near again, you heard Elon's voice once more, faint, as though carried on static. The future doesn't belong to those who wait for it. It belongs to those who choose it. Remember, it's about your life, yes, but it's also about theirs. Every decision ripples. Keep going. The words faded, leaving you in stillness, but you smiled. You finally understood. This wasn't about 2 hours anymore. It was about every hour that followed, every step forward, every act chosen. The countdown had ended, but the mission had only just begun. The city stretched before you like a living organism, streets pulsing with movement, lights flickering like neurons, conversations weaving into a constant hum. You walked through it not as you once did, but as someone who had been awakened to a deeper rhythm beneath the surface. Every step felt connected to something larger, every glance carried hidden significance. And yet, the shadows were moving. You could sense them now, not with your eyes but with the strange sight that had opened in you since Michael's sword touched your hand. They clung to corners, to alleys, to faces dulled by exhaustion. You noticed them hovering behind laughter that was too sharp, words that cut without cause, choices made from fear instead of love. They weren't creatures of fangs and claws, they were subtler, quieter, yet heavier than stone. The first confrontation came without warning. You were crossing a quiet bridge at night when you saw a man leaning over the railing, his face pale, eyes hollow. The city glowed faintly beneath him, but he seemed not to notice. His shoulders trembled as though carrying a burden too large to bear. Something inside you urged you forward, though fear clawed at your chest. The closer you came, the colder the air grew, as if invisible hands were draining warmth from the night. Then you saw it, a shadow curling around him, whispering into his ear. You couldn't hear the words, but you knew their shape, lies of despair, the poison of hopelessness. Your first instinct was to shout, to run, to call for help. But then the memory returned: forgiveness is a shield. Truth is a sword. Love is armor. You drew a breath and stepped closer, your voice steady despite the trembling in your bones. You are not alone. The man startled, turning sharply. His eyes were wide, glazed, almost unseeing. "Leave me," he muttered. "It doesn't matter. Nothing matters." The shadow coiled tighter around him, as if feeding on his words. You felt its malice press against your skin, invisible yet tangible. And then, almost instinctively, you reached for the sword within, the one Michael had given in the desert dream. It wasn't in your hands physically, but in your spirit, it blazed. "I see you," you said softly, not to the man but to the shadow. "And you have no claim here." Light surged within your chest, pouring out through your words. The shadow hissed, silent to the ear but deafening to your spirit, and recoiled. The man gasped, as if something heavy had been lifted from his shoulders. He staggered, collapsing against the railing, eyes clearing as though waking from a nightmare. You caught him before he fell. "Breathe," you whispered. "You're still here. You're needed." Tears streaked his face, though he didn't know why. He clung to you as if drowning. I don't know what came over me," he stammered. Something told me it was over." "It's not over," you said, your voice firm. "Your story isn't done. Not tonight." He nodded weakly, like a child soothed by a parent's voice. The shadow had vanished, dissolved into the air, leaving only the faint scent of smoke and ash. But you knew this was only the first. The adversaries would not yield so easily. That night, when you finally returned home, the angel stood waiting, luminous as ever. "You did well," it said. "But understand, every victory draws greater resistance. The more light you carry, the more shadows will seek to extinguish it." You sat heavily, exhausted in a way that reached beyond flesh. "Why me?" you asked again, though the question sounded smaller now, less about doubt and more about wonder. The angel tilted its head. "Because God does not measure worthiness the way humans do. He measures willingness. You were willing to step forward when the call came. That is enough." Then the room shifted, and Michael himself appeared, not as a dream this time, but standing tall in your presence, his wings folded with authority, his sword gleaming faintly at his side. His gaze pierced into you, sharp and unyielding. "You have tasted battle," Michael said. "Now you must learn endurance. Do not think of yourself as savior, the Savior is above. Think of yourself as vessel, as soldier. Shadows will come in greater numbers. They will not always look like despair. Sometimes they will disguise themselves as comfort, as ambition, as false light. Test everything. You swallowed, nodding. His words pressed like weight against your chest, but it was the kind of weight that strengthened rather than crushed. Michael leaned closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Remember Elon's words, the future belongs to those who choose it. Your choices are no longer only for yourself. Every act bends the balance for many. Before you could reply, he was gone, leaving only the faint shimmer of his presence in the air. The next morning arrived ordinary in appearance, but you knew better. You moved through your day with new eyes, each interaction holding potential, each moment charged with unseen consequence. And yet, as you passed through crowded streets, you caught glimpses of the adversaries again, lurking, watching, waiting. You realized then that the countdown had not ended at 0. It had only reset, starting a new measure of time, not hours now, but every moment of your life. Every breath was a choice. Every heartbeat was a step. And somewhere, faint but clear, you heard Elon's voice once more, almost smiling, now you understand. The days that followed felt heavier, as if each sunrise carried with it a trial tailored to test your spirit. You found yourself drawn to places you would have once avoided, quiet corners of the city where sorrow clung like damp air, alleys where the forgotten drifted, homes where silence screamed louder than words. Something guided you, nudging you into these encounters, as though the invisible hand of destiny was steering your every step. And yet, the adversaries grew bolder. They didn't always appear as shadows anymore. Sometimes, they slipped behind familiar faces. A colleague offering shortcuts that seemed harmless but carried corruption hidden beneath. A friend whose words of encouragement disguised envy and manipulation. Even moments of comfort, so soft and inviting, would suddenly reveal an undertow pulling you toward despair. Archangel Michael appeared often now, not in blazing glory every time, but sometimes as a faint figure glimpsed in reflections or a sudden spark of strength in your chest when you were about to falter. He trained you not with swords of steel, but with sharpened truths. You must learn to discern, he told you one night, his form towering above you while your room was drenched in silver moonlight. The enemy does not always roar. Sometimes he whispers. Sometimes he disguises poison in sweet honey. To fight, you must not only see, but know. How do I know? You asked, weary, your voice barely above a whisper. Michael extended his hand, and suddenly the room fell away. You stood with him in a vast plain of golden light stretching endlessly, like a field between heaven and earth. Around you, countless figures appeared, humans, but wrapped in shifting veils of light and shadow. Some glowed brightly, radiating warmth. Others flickered, uncertain. And some, though smiling, carried within them a darkness that pulsed like hidden fire. Listen with your spirit, Michael instructed. The figures began to speak. Some praised you, flattering with words so sweet they felt like music. Some spoke of fear, of weakness, of futility. Others spoke simply of truth, cutting through with clarity. At first, you couldn't tell the difference. The flattering voices drew you in, their words intoxicating. The fearful ones weighed you down, making your heart ache. But then you noticed, when truth was spoken, no matter how sharp or challenging, it brought peace. Even when it called you to change, it felt like freedom. Michael nodded, seeing your realization. That is how you know. Peace is the seal of heaven. Chaos, despair, confusion, these are the fingerprints of the adversary. As he spoke, the false voices began to fade, their smiles unraveling into snarls. The true lights shone brighter, steady as stars. You turned back to Michael, your breath trembling. So the real battle isn't out there, it's in here, you said, pressing a hand to your chest. Yes, Michael replied firmly. And once you win it here, you can carry that victory out into the world. When the vision ended, you were back in your room, dawn creeping through the curtains. But the weight of his words clung to you like armor. That very day, the test came. Walking into a crowded square, you felt it before you saw it, a heaviness in the air, a tension like strings pulled too tight. People moved hurriedly, agitated, angry without cause. Arguments broke out over trivial things, a spilled drink, a misplaced step, a misheard word. It was as if an invisible storm had descended upon the crowd. Then you saw her. A woman stood in the center, her expression calm, her smile radiant. She spoke softly, yet her voice carried over the noise. All of this, she said sweetly, is pointless. Why fight? Why struggle? Why carry burdens when you can simply give up? The crowd quieted, drawn to her words. For a moment, even you felt a strange pull, a honey-sweet seduction weaving through your thoughts. What if she was right? What if surrendering, giving in to the tide, was easier than fighting? But then you remembered Michael's words, peace is the seal of heaven. You looked closer. Her smile was too perfect. Her calm too cold. And in her eyes, there was no light, only endless hunger. You stepped forward, your voice firm. You don't speak peace. You speak despair dressed in silk. Her smile faltered, just for an instant. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some looked at you with confusion, others with hope. You raised your voice, not in anger, but in clarity. Life is not pointless. Every breath carries meaning. Every choice bends the future. You say give up, but I say stand. Stand because you are needed. Stand because you are loved. The air crackled. The woman's form flickered, her beauty unraveling into shadow. A hiss escaped her lips, sharp as breaking glass. The crowd gasped, stepping back. You lifted your hand, not with force, but with truth burning through your words. You have no power here. And just like that, the figure shattered into smoke, vanishing into the wind. The people blinked, dazed as though waking from a spell. A child tugged at your sleeve, eyes wide. What did you do? You knelt, meeting the child's gaze. I didn't do it. Truth did. And in that moment, you understood what Michael had been preparing you for. This was no longer about surviving the countdown. This was about carrying light into every shadow, no matter how well it disguised itself. That night, as you closed your eyes, Elon's voice returned once more, calm yet commanding. Now you see, your life was never just yours. It's the spark meant to ignite many. The following nights brought no rest. Even in sleep, the battles continued, not with swords and fire, but with visions that forced you to confront corners of your heart you had long ignored. Michael stood with you in those dreams, but this time, he didn't fight beside you. He only watched, his sword grounded in the earth, his eyes solemn, as if waiting to see whether you could stand on your own. The battlefield wasn't a city or desert this time, it was a hall of mirrors. Each reflection showed you not as you were, but as you feared to be. In one mirror, you saw yourself small, powerless, voiceless in the chaos of the world. In another, you saw yourself corrupted, chasing greed, ambition, and hollow recognition. In another still, you saw yourself broken, abandoned, a failure who had let everyone down. The reflections spoke, their voices overlapping into a cacophony